Hi, I'm Jess.
And I'm Bryn.
Welcome to another week.
The lines between business and life aren't always clear, especially when you're building something from the ground up.
At the Double Digest, we're talking about what it really takes to run a brand, navigate challenges, and show up fully, both in work and in life.
Let's dive in.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to another week.
We can't wait to take you behind the scenes on building Double. So last week, Jess, that was your last, week at MEC. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling relieved, despite it being obviously, it was a financial blessing, and I'm very grateful for the contract opportunity. It's so much to manage multiple jobs and, trying to work out and relationships. So,
and I guess
I'm quite...
Context for people listening.
Oh, yeah.
So we started Double in 2020, and we can tell more about that story later, but, we weren't full-time when we started in 2020, and we were lucky kind of that we had our evenings and weekends free to be able to work on the business. Why don't you share kind of like your work trajectory since we started?
Yeah, great idea. So when we first incorporated the business, it was COVID, so I think I was between jobs at the time, and then I started working full-time for MEC, I think shortly after, for about a year as a merchant, and then I transitioned to Herschel as a senior merchant again for a year, and that's when the business really started picking up. And I made a really large life change where I moved back to my hometown to live with my parents. I quit my job, I got rid of all my things, and then I did move to a contract position with MEC, like my first employer. I stayed in like really great terms with my director, which has been so great. And then I had a short-term contract with them, and then I worked on the business full-time for about, I think it was 8 months. And then I did another contract with MEC. So, it's been a lot of transitioning between different hours for the business. And I think initially when I transitioned from full-time on Double back to having another full-time job on top of that, it was really difficult because I tried to do both, and obviously that's not sustainable. So I was very burnt out, and I think now I have a better handle on it. But it's obviously just difficult to get everything done. It's almost impossible. So very grateful for the opportunity, but definitely excited to dive back into the business and just have a little bit more balance in general, I guess, in my schedule.
Yeah, for sure. I found, because February was my first month full-time since April 2023, and it just makes such a big difference. Like I was from May 2024 until towards the end of December, I was only 15 hours a week. So, it didn't feel like a lot. It was just 3 hours every day, but it's still, you're splitting your brain space into two different, and for both of us, our jobs were not at all related to building an AI infrastructure to make precision fit better and advanced manufacturing. So it was, a really big split between the two jobs and keeping both things and managing 2 emails and 2 different teams. So I feel like it's just a lot better to have everything streamlined. And also the flexibility of being an entrepreneur, of managing your own schedule, I think is also a lot nicer.
Yeah, I think people don't talk enough about how tiring brain split or splitting things is. Splitting things. Anyway, yeah, sorry. Splitting things in your brain when you're changing tasks, I think is what I'm trying to say, because I agree, there's been times where I'm I don't feel like, we're efficient workers, so I'm I can get this done in a few hours, and then I have all this time for this, but then it's emails, meeting, and then it feels like at the end of the day you didn't even get very much done because you spent so much of your brain capacity switching tasks versus strategically thinking, creatively thinking.
I mean, it's same with if you're running and you run in a straight line, you can run faster than if you're having to run in a zigzag.
Yeah.
Because you have the momentum, right? And every time you switch course, you lose a bit of the momentum. That's why if a hippo's chasing you, you have to run in a zigzag. Because the hippo can't move as agilely as you can. So that's how you outrun a hippo, which are really dangerous. So just in case you ever get chased by a hippo.
That's funny. I'd love to hear more about your routine. I know since you transitioned full-time to the business in February, you did so much work on figuring out what is your optimal schedule and how scheduling is so different for everyone based on what's best for their bodies and, when they feel most focused and all of that. So I'd love to hear how you came up with your schedule.
Yeah, and I think to your point earlier too, of just even context switching, having blocks of time dedicated to certain things is so helpful, because then you're not using the brain capacity to think, what should I be doing right now? So I remember I was screen sharing with somebody last week, and they saw my calendar and they were like, oh my God, because every single space is filled, but it's filled not with like meetings necessarily, it's filled with tasks or downtime, and just by scheduling it in, you just save so much brain capacity of trying to think what you should be doing in that moment. So same with the morning routine, I've set it up so that it's scheduled into the calendar. I know exactly what I'm doing during the morning and I'm not wasting time. And for me, it was really about figuring out, like, playing to my own strengths. And it's really easy to take an influencer's morning routine or have ChatGPT make you a morning routine, but until you try it, which is similar to starting a business, right? Testing and iterating, you don't really know what's going to work for you. So I did a lot of different things. I know I like working out in the morning, so I had tried waking up and working out first thing, and I just can't. Again, it's the momentum. Like, it's so hard to go from lying horizontally to moving your body. So I would struggle to get out of bed knowing that I'd have to be working out, and then I would just be slow in the morning. So now I'm focused on easing my body into working out. And one of the ways that I'm doing that is I wake up in the morning, I have like water, and I'm trying to drink more water. So I always fill up my like big water bottle in the morning and put it right beside my desk. So again, I can't forget. I like give the cat water the plants if they need them, like the morning's water. And then, and I drink lemon water in the morning because I specifically don't make enough stomach acid on my own. So for me, that works. Not everybody needs to drink lemon water in the morning, but I do that. And then I meditate. And I've been using Headspace, so I'm meditating for anywhere from 5 minutes to 10 minutes right now. I'm just trying to build up that skill. And I like meditating first thing in the morning because otherwise I'll forget to do it. So it's just nice to have that. And also, you're in a more of like a dreamlike space right in the morning, so I find that's really good time to practice. And then after I meditate, I try to tidy or clean the house for maybe 20 minutes. And that might be I pick one drawer and I just like get rid of that. Sometimes I'll also do like digital clean. So I might go through photos from the last month and delete things I don't need. But just something where I felt productive. I've like chipped away at something so it doesn't feel so big. Like I used to not clean regularly, and then it'd be like a big clean, every week for hours. So this way it's like chipping away at it. And then after I clean, I work. So I do an hour of work on something that I don't want to do. So I'll have like a to-do list of things I need to start, and I'll pick something from there, and I just dedicate the time to it because I'm also somebody that tends to procrastinate. So this way I'm just like giving it my best, and I might not finish it, but at least I've started it, and that makes a big difference. And then after that, I work out. So that way I've like felt like I've checked something off my to-do list. I've moved my body a bit, in between and tidying up. And then I like feel really ready to work out. And then I can start my day after that, like back to my desk. But I feel like so productive from that morning. And I feel like, again, I'm leveraging my strengths. Like I have, the willpower and motivation in the morning to do those hard tasks. So I might as well use that. I leverage that to then work out. So that's what's been working really well for me.
Yeah, I love so much of what you just said, especially the point of like calendar blocking. I feel like a lot of people don't block in time for like their mental health or like working out or downtime. And then everyone's like, oh my God, your schedule's overwhelming. But it actually brings like so much peace to have, like you said, that off of your brain, because it's like you've written it down, so you don't have to like consistently been thinking about your to-do list. And then, yeah, I love playing to your own strengths. I think that's so smart.
Yeah, and the nice thing, too, about blocking it in a calendar, especially a digital calendar, is you can then move things. So when I was traveling last week in Halifax, I couldn't, necessarily have the same routine that I wanted to do, but I would just, last night, for example, I try to block off a couple hours every evening just for myself or for relationships. And last night I was at a dinner, and then you and I were doing some work on the CRA, so I didn't have any of that like personal time, so I've just moved that block like on the weekend to make sure I dedicate like 2 hours to spending time with Harrison or with a friend, or for myself. So it's nice to be able to move things around like that. And same with in Halifax, like I knew I wasn't going to have anything to like tidy when I was in Halifax. Like I did maybe like some stuff again online, like with photos, but I just adjusted my morning routine to be a bit different. And it's just easy with like we use Google Calendar to just adjust the blocks. So I like that too, that not every day is going to be perfect, but if you can use the adjustability and just shift things around, then you can be at least 80% of the time doing what you're trying to do.
Yeah, I feel like Google Calendars is the best thing ever. And I think what's also fun to share is that Bryn and I share each other's calendars. So we can always see what the other person's doing, even if it's a personal thing. Like, I'm sure other co-founders can relate to this, where you feel like you know every aspect of your co-founder's life intimately. But it's really helpful because also then when somebody does have like that downtime scheduled or that meditation or workout scheduled, we know that person's doing that, so we can like hold off on sending that message or say like, no rush, answer me in the morning or whatever. And I feel like that's been really helpful for us too.
Totally. I was a bit anti Gmail. Like you and I had a bit of a back and forth on what system to use, because I have always used Windows computers, and at work that's what we use. So I was always an Outlook kind of person, and you were more of a Gmail. And so the first year we started our business, we used Outlook, and we actually didn't have separate emails, and we would write almost every email together, read every email together, super joint. And then we developed our own personal emails as we started to split the business tasks. And then we tried out Gmail it was supposed to be just a year, but I've been happy with it. I know I've set it up basically like Outlook. I love GCal better than I like the Outlook calendar. So yeah, it's worked out.
Yeah, I love that. I'm the opposite, where like in my corporate jobs, if we've used Outlook, I set it up like Gmail because I just like, I can't make it. I feel like you become so used to one version and it's so difficult to switch.
Yeah. What did you find was helpful for you when you were managing basically 2 full-time jobs from a productivity standpoint?
Yeah, I think I still struggle with that, honestly. It's I think back to your point, it's about learning where your strengths are and what works best for you. And I've learned about myself, like, I don't find I'm like innately a procrastinator, but I'm one of those people that like needs a clean inbox. Otherwise, I don't feel like I can focus on a big task. Like it's almost like that idea of like if you're working in clutter, you don't feel like you can get anything done because your brain feels overwhelmed. So I'm like not a slave to my email, but if like you will never find my email high because it will like feel so overwhelming that I can't even like think to do a different task. And like this week, we were submitting a CRA audit for shred work, and it's been on my to-do list for a literal month. So that doesn't speak well to my procrastination point. But it was one of those things where I was having such a hard time keeping up with everything else and like chipping away at emails and like littler, like smaller tasks that were coming up. And I knew I needed like kind of like 16 hours, almost like 2 full days for this. And I had a hard time like blocking that kind of time out. So I think when I had the 2 jobs, if I can, try to schedule like calls during specific hours and then block specific time for like deep thought work that like you really need, that half an hour to like get into the work, and then set yourself up. I'm also, I don't know if people can relate to this. I know, I do this, but I'm such a TV background watcher. If I am doing deep work, like not so much for emails or like if I have to think and like type and things like that, but I do a lot of Excel work. So anything that's a little bit less
words.
Yeah, that's just sort of like repetitive or just like, whatever. I love to kind of like put on Gossip Girl in the background and like get into my flow or like listen to a podcast. So I find that really helpful, even though it sounds, I think, distracting.
I'm so impressed that you can do that, because the number of times I've thought like, oh, it looks, like Jess makes this look so good. And then I'll sit in front of the TV and I can't even bring myself to, like, I'll realize I've just been sitting in front of the TV blank because I just can't do 2 things at once. And like, I couldn't even find a show and watch it, or like I'll start it and then I'll forget to play it because I'm very much like work in silence kind of person.
Yeah, and I have to say it only works with shows that you've already seen before or like reality TV. If it's any type of show where you do need to pay attention in like any capacity, it does not work. So I've definitely made that mistake before. But yeah, I don't know if it's from like living alone or being like an only child. Like I just like the noise. It's like there's somebody else in the room. It's like having, when you have a friend over and you're not necessarily like chatting or hanging out, but it's just like nice to have that presence.
Yeah.
It's like I'm the cast of Gossip Girl.
A fun fact about you also is that your memory for TV show lines is insanely good. Like if anybody ever needs to get somebody on their trivia team, you just have such an amazing memory for TV show lines, which is so
because
fun.
I do this, so I rewatch my favorite shows like 10 times a year. Yeah. So what else was your focus this week in work?
Yeah, so this week, there's obviously been a lot of shifts from the like macroeconomic perspective in North America, and in Canada specifically, there's been a lot of people who want to be supporting Canadian businesses. And so as a Canadian business, we're trying to make sure we can get in front of these people from, a marketing standpoint. And there's been a lot of, talk about building pages for people to find or lists. And there was a great beauty resource that popped up, the Indie Beauty Collective, that has all of the Canadian beauty companies. And we're going to do the same thing for apparel. So I've been working with Abby, our marketing manager, to set up a Canadian fashion collective where we can list all of the companies that are either, headquartered in Canada or produced in Canada, and people can shop that way. And I'm hoping we can then have all of these different collectives posted somewhere on a government page so that people can, makes it easy for them to shop and support Canadian. So that's one of the things that we've been focusing on this week. And then the other thing is we're getting into fundraising. And fundraising is really interesting because it's so much about understanding your long-term vision and also your short-term strategy, for that round to get to the next round to then fulfill the long-term vision. And it's this really difficult thing sometimes they say it's like having a microscope in one eye and a telescope in the other, because you need to be so clear on where you want to end up in 10 to 20 years, but that that's going to change a million times over and it's never going to be what you think it will be. But then you also have to understand, okay, based on that, what do I need to do in the next year? What are those milestones? What are those focus areas? And then set yourself up that you're able to achieve those, but also be able to pivot to the long term. So it's been a lot of just thinking, and again, making time to think about what that's going to look like for us, right? And a lot of conversations that you and I have had. It's interesting too, because I was thinking about thinking, and I feel like people spend so much time consuming content, like inputting into themselves, that there's never enough time for them to output their own thoughts and ideas. So even like waiting for the streetcar, I'm trying not to be on my phone. I'm just trying to have that space to think. I feel like that's why people have so many ideas in the shower, because you have nothing inputting, so you actually have the chance to think for the, maybe the only time in your day. So I've been trying to have a lot of those more dead zone moments where I can actually have my own outputs instead of just constantly inputting.
Yeah, I love that. I think isn't it like humans take in 60,000 pieces of information per day, I think. Like
I wouldn't be
surprised. So high because there's obviously like technology. We have our phones, we have our laptops, and we have billboards and the radio. And I think you're right that it's so rare to be bored and it's so rare to be quiet. And I know, back to your previous question, actually, I was trying to think about how I've been managing things. And I do have an app on my phone, I think it's called DOUBL, and it blocks out your social apps. And I find it like so helpful, like surprisingly helpful, because you don't realize whenever you do have that dead time, how easy it is to just go onto your phone and start scrolling through Instagram or TikTok, and then like half an hour goes by and you're like, oh, I actually wanted to go to bed early tonight, but now it's 11 p.m. Or like I wanted to meditate and this was easier. Like a lot of that self-development work, like it's so rewarding, but not necessarily fun. It's like working
it's
out
harder.
where it's totally, yeah.
One thing also from a like long-term, short-term perspective is like we both went to Ivy Business School and they did the case method, and the case method I feel is often quite short-term focused. This is the problem that the person's trying to solve. What's the answer? And it's really hard to simulate that long-term planning at the same time. But I was reflecting this week about what I feel like has helped me navigate that the most. And the answer won't surprise you, Jess, because you know me, but I think board games have been such a good way of kind of simulating
fun.
that mental activity, because in a board game there's an objective, and usually it'll be to get the most victory points, and there's so many different ways that you can get victory points, and so you have to think about a strategy that works for you based on whatever setup you have, so whatever you are best at. But then somebody else might come in and that strategy changes, and so you have to constantly be changing your strategy to keep getting more victory points. But I also find in board games there's lots of distractions. Like, there's lots of things that you can do that feels like building but isn't actually getting you more victory points. And so it's always making sure that you're doing things that have a return on your investment in victory points, if that's what the point of the game is. So I feel like that's been helpful in that mindset, just getting into that idea of the long term and the short term and how they interplay.
Yeah, that's so fun. I love that. A fun fact about us as well, Bryn and I have brainstormed about starting a board game business in the past. When Bryn was getting married, we kept coming up with like fun scenarios, or not fun scenarios, that could happen before the wedding. And then we were like, oh, it would have been so fun to make a board game about wedding planning, because it was also like, I was Bryn's maid of honor, but it was my first wedding ever. So it was like so much learning for me as well. And there's so much that goes into wedding planning. It's like another full-time job. So we thought that would have been so fun. And we're always thinking of business ideas. And sometimes we wish we'd pick something simpler.
What about you? What were the main thing? Well, you had the CRA audit.
Yes.
This week.
Yes. So this year was the first year we applied for SHRED, which, if anyone who's listening is in a startup that's focused a little bit more on technology or creation of something very novel, SHRED is a research and development rebate. So essentially any money that you've put towards research and development in creating something truly novel and bringing it to the world that hasn't previously existed, you get a cash rebate for that work. So super helpful for cash flow for smaller businesses. And you can claim it like up to 18 months back. Like, if, say, for example, like we've been in business for close to 5 years now, and this last like tax season was the first one that we've claimed for, just because in the very first 2 years we didn't put as much money behind research and development. So anyway, it's quite a long process. You do have to submit like all of your financial ledgers and like emails and sketches and like who was involved and grant money and like everything you could possibly think of that was relevant. And then after that, you do an interview with the CRA and they ask you questions, and you prepare a presentation, and then they can ask for supplementary information. So we're at that stage now where they're asking for supplementary information. It's also very normal to have an audit done when it's your first year, because they want to make sure that you're understanding the program and what you're claiming is legitimate. So we're in that last stage where it's supplementary information. However, it's a lot of supplementary information. I do typically really like these types of tasks where they're like really like regimented and like clear, and like I feel like I'm a very like I like checking things off type of person. So whereas I feel like Bryn's really good at like big picture thinking and like longevity and like creative and out of the box thinking, I'm a lot more like I don't know the word, but like I like when things are like clear and like more in the box, I guess.
You're also very good at executing. Like, you're good at knowing what needs to be done and getting things done.
Thank you. So normally these types of tasks I do really like any sort of organizational task is maybe a good way of putting it. But it was just like very, very long. So I had been putting it off. So it had been a little bit stressful, but I finally got it done yesterday, which was good. And it is interesting to look back on the work, because this is for 2023, and we're now in a totally different version of what we were building back then. Mm-hmm. So that is interesting to look back on. And I think it's always hard to remember what you've done to get to where you are today.
Yeah, so important to reflect on how far you've come, because it's such a good way to stay motivated.
Yeah. And I've learned so much about technology and AI through this job. I feel like I knew nothing about that, and like a lot of what we submitted was like novel source code and like unique application of algorithms and things like that. So it's pretty neat, like all the skills that we've developed since starting this business.
Yeah, totally. And this is why the 1 hour work block in the morning is helpful, because it just gets you started on big things like that.
Yeah, so true.
Because it can be very daunting. I think also especially daunting that it was for like an audit and the CRA, and there's a lot of money on the line, right? So it also feels like you build it up in your head, and it starts to feel really stressful in and of itself.
Yeah, totally. How do you feel about like when you have personal little things to do? Do you find that gets in the way of like a morning block? Because I sometimes find if I'm like, oh, I need to like, I don't know, something random, like I need to make an appointment at my bank, or I like forgot to like text my friend to cover me for volleyball this week. I feel like those things really like linger in my head, and I don't feel like I can like clear space to do a work block.
But what if you did, because that 20 minutes in the morning that I spend cleaning, you could just reallocate that to be personal admin.
Personal admin. Yeah, that's smart.
And if you keep a list on your phone of all the little things you need to do, and then, right, especially if you like checklist, and then the next morning you just go through that and you bang everything off.
Yeah, I have been finding Google Calendars to be really helpful with that. I'll just put in a 15-minute follow up with so-and-so, or remember this.
Yeah, I do that too. Like text somebody happy birthday, just so you don't forget.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so to wrap up today's podcast, our first ever full episode, let's go through what our snake and ladder for the week was. So we'll try to do this every week, and basically the snake is whatever kind of set us back, and then the ladder is whatever brought us forward, with the idea that it's always kind of 2 steps forward, 1 step back. So Jess, do you want to go first? What was your snake and what was your ladder?
Yes, I have a silly/frustrating snake. So we've been shipping out all of our Kickstarter bras, which has been really exciting, and calling our customers. And one of our customers, when I followed up with her, she had unfortunately just moved, so we had sent her bra to the wrong address. And then ironically, she had just landed in Kelowna, and that's where I live, so I could have like quite literally handed her the bras.
Because right now our distribution center is your apartment.
Yeah, exactly. So that was just such bad timing. And then we looked into it to see if we could get it like returned from Canada Post to then like re-deliver it to her house, and it's just like lost in the Canada Post ether. Like the new owners of the house can't find it, so I have no idea what happened. So anyway, we have to remake her bras and ship them to her correct address.
It's so silly too, because our package is one of the ones that like you can't steal, because it's literally made to each client's body.
I know.
Like, it wouldn't even work if you stole it.
And I don't know how it works when you move, but I'm pretty sure it was like delivered to like a lock and key box.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Anyway, so that was unfortunate. And then ladder is we just interviewed somebody for a assistant pattern making position, and she was so lovely. And it's always so great to find a good candidate, because we have definitely gone through many hires and I guess not too many fires, but like learning experiences, I guess, when it comes to hiring, and how important that is as a smaller team, because everyone truly makes such a big impact. So when you find the right person, it's very exciting.
Totally.
Yeah. What were your snake and ladder this week?
Okay, so my snake for this week was that we got an email from somebody who we had asked to review the website, and they didn't have anything nice to say. And I think it's always hard to hear, obviously, criticism. I think in this case, I took a couple of days to reflect on the criticism, and some of it's relevant. I think especially because you're asking somebody how they're interpreting what you've put together in a very short time frame. So some of the things that they fed back to us wasn't aligned with what we were trying to do. So obviously there's a communication mismatch. So that's, I'll take that back, and then we'll change how we're coming across so that we're able to kind of hit the things that we're missing. Some other feedback, I think it was just clear that this person is not our target market. And I think that's always important to keep in mind, because you can take feedback from everybody and then try to make something for everyone, and by making something for everybody you make it for nobody. So it's also understanding like who is your target market and who are you building for, and is that aligning? And I was trying to think if there was any one thing that was for everybody. Like if there's one product in the world that every single person uses.
Toilet paper?
No, but there's brands.
Yeah, right. Oh, Kleenex.
Like even bottled water, there's different water.
Yeah,
No,
that's
there's
true.
like Scotty's tissues and like
Yeah,
puffs.
no, that's so true.
Right, that have different benefits. Like they're more moisturizing, but not everybody wants a moisturizing Kleenex. Like I think I can even like arguably one of the most prolific brands in the world, Apple. Like there's some diehard Android users.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, my boyfriend and I argue about Android versus Apple like more than I would like.
So it just goes to show you literally can't please everybody. Everybody has, is a different person and they have different wants and needs. And so you're never going to be able to do that for everybody. And I think as a business owner, we've had to hone that skill of knowing who to listen to and who not to listen to, right? Like when to take in that feedback and make a change and when not to. So again, hard to hear, but I think a helpful lesson.
I also really like what you said about taking a few days to reflect and taking both the good and the bad, because I think it's important for founders especially to be coachable and to hear criticism and critical feedback, and obviously like not always listen to everything, because at the end of the day it's your business and you know it's best, but at the same time your product is for people and those people need to see value in that product. So it goes both ways, and I think that's great that you took that approach.
Yeah, I mean, it's two ends of the spectrum, right? Like on one side, if you're your own target market and you're just building what you want, you could be building something that nobody else wants. And on the other side, if you're just taking in every single person's feedback, then you're also building something that nobody wants because it's not specific. So, yeah, I thought that was a good learning. And then on the latter side, we were introduced to a mentor who has experience having led a bra company, and he's just been such a wealth of information. I got to meet him in person for the first time this week, and it was so great to be able to he reviewed our actual product, and to talk to him about the product, but also talk to him about that bigger vision and how to get there, and just bounce ideas off. And I always feel so energized after those kinds of things. This week actually I had a lot of in-person time. Like we had Ladies in Tech Drinks, which is a monthly event, and that was just such a nice environment to be in, and you always meet so many amazing people. And then the dinner last night, I got to meet some new people too, and I find I personally, like as an extrovert, I really like being in those scenarios, so that was really great too. And then also last Friday when I was in Halifax, it was for the venture capital investment competition, which was such an amazing experience because we were the startups that they were using kind of as content to test out what it would be like to be a venture capitalist. And it was neat to be part of that whole process, kind of on the more of the behind the scenes, and see, what goes into an investment decision, what kind of questions do they ask during due diligence, like where are the holes in your pitch, what kinds of hesitations do they have about investing in your business, what are the reasons that they would. And then what are the questions that an investment committee would then go back to the VC for? Because as a founder, you can then prepare, your VC, because they're your advocate at the end of the day. So that was such a great experience as well. So a lot of those kind of like nice network moments where I felt like I was kind of shining in my element.
Yeah, I love that. And that timing, couldn't have been better with the investment pitch competition. That was so great. And I think this is also where you and I differ, and where our skill sets are so complementary, because I would identify as an introvert. So I think I love a good networking event. I've been in more than enough roles where client facing is a huge part of the job, and business school and all of that. But if I had to go to a networking event every single day, I would not be pleased. So,
I do feel like though it was a skill set, and it was a skill set that I lost during COVID, because I came back into in-person events like here in Ontario probably like in 2022 was when we first started to have, and they weren't even that ramped up. And I felt so awkward again, like kind of like a deer with those like gangly legs. Like I just wasn't used to the small talk, and I forgot how to exit conversations. And I only feel like just now am I getting back into my own when it comes to the confidence in networking and knowing how to navigate it. So I thought that was kind of interesting too, how it's very much a skill you have to practice.
Yeah, 100%. I think you're so right. And it's such a skill that can be so scary, and like you're always in a room with new people and you're having to advocate and speak about your business and about yourself, and I think it's generally so intimidating, so it definitely takes practice.
Yeah. Well, excited to see what next week has in store for us. It's always a treat. Sometimes it's a trick.
Yeah, ups and downs.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks for listening. Bye for now.
Bye.
Building something new, whether it's a business brand or a personal brand, is always a journey.
We appreciate you tuning in to the Double Digest. If this episode resonated with you, let us know with a review, share with a friend, and subscribe to keep up with more behind the scenes and real talk.
See you next Monday.